Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Identity, Privacy, and Consent, Critical Healthcare Capabilities with Forgerock and Onfido. Before we get started, I'd like to review a few housekeeping details. Today's webinar is being recorded and an online archive of today's event will be available a few days after the session. If you have trouble seeing the slides at any time during the presentation, please press F5 to refresh your screen if you are on a PC. If you are on a Mac, please press Command R. You may ask a question at any time during the presentation by typing your question into the Q&A box located on the right side of your screen and pressing Enter. And finally, I'd like to remind you of AHIP's antitrust statement located on the Handouts section at the bottom of your screen. The antitrust statement prohibits us from discussing competitively sensitive information. We are very fortunate to have with us today Mr. Ashley Stevenson and Mr. Kevin Trilli. Ashley Stevenson has 20 years of experience in cybersecurity and digital identity, and in a past life was the Chief Architect for Identity and Access Management at the Department of Homeland Security. Ashley joined Forgerock in 2015. In his earlier years, Ashley directed innovation initiatives in the Office of the CTO. Today, he's the VP of Product and Solution Marketing, where he's passionate about helping innovative identity technologies drive new business values for our customers. Kevin Trilli is Chief Product Officer on Onfido. Previously, he served as SVP of Product at data privacy management company TrustArc. Kevin has more than 20 years of product and entrepreneurial experience in digital data security, privacy, and governance, having led initiatives from strategy to execution to sale at companies including VeriSign, TrustArc, and AssertID. He leads the strategic evolution of the Onfido product platform. At this time, I would like to turn the floor over to our speakers. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, for joining today. Kevin and I are really looking forward to sharing this time with you and talking about the importance of identity and privacy and consent to your digital transformation. So let's get started. To start off, let's make sure the slides are moving here. Okay. See if this works. Okay, there we go. So to start off, let's make a point that I think is well known to everyone, and that's that every healthcare business today is now a digital business. Especially in the light of the events of this year, digital transformation, the pace of it has just increased massively. If you look at some of the key things that are important today for digital transformation, we see them in these boxes here. So on the sort of above the water or front office or visible to folks is the importance of seamless experiences. And we'll talk about the comparison and the balance between achieving seamless experiences for your end users and establishing the right level of security and privacy controls to meet compliance, but also to build trust with your consumers. In the back office and below the waterline, if you will, we've also got the importance of our IT shops, the folks who are responsible for installing, configuring, maintaining, and keeping these systems online. And so an important aspect of digital transformation is the ability to manage the costs and to ensure that we have the proper productivity and efficiencies with the IT workforce that makes all of this happen. So bringing these things together is a really important part of digital transformation. And the part that we're going to talk about today, which is also a critical piece, is digital identity. And so if we look at digital identity from sort of an abstract view of what is it that we're really trying to achieve. I'm going to have to do this to get the slide to move. Let's see. Okay, so we're looking at achieving a very simple outcome in the abstract. So if we boil down identity to the key thing that we're trying to do in an organization, it's to provide this simple outcome. Sounds simple enough, right? To give the right access to the right people and the right things at the right time. But getting there can be increasingly complex in the things that are going on in the back office systems today, right? So the ability to do that has changed and evolved over time in what's required. So if we look at today's requirements, and apologies for a little delay, I'm just waiting for the slides to update. I'm not sure if you're seeing on your side a little bit of delay in slides changing, but today's requirements are we need to provide a modern identity, right, that is smart and is delivered where, when, and how it's needed. And that can get more difficult when you've got folks connecting from home, trying to do remote, telemedicine, and you need to be able to understand if they are who they say they are when they're trying to register. They've got different devices, all these different things. But in the end, the expectation from our user base is still to be able to have that right access, right people, right time. And so the theme that you'll hear us talk about today is how do we achieve that in a way that provides the right experience to the users without compromising the security and giving them the things that they need in order to provide those capabilities. So on the next slide, as we switch here, and I'm waiting on my view for it to pop up. We have we say identity is the currency of care, right? And so what do we mean by that? If we look at all the different circles here that are going across the slide, we see we've got from hospital to payments, whether you're in the space of a provider or payers or healthcare retail or health and life sciences, what you're really talking about is a business process that has to integrate across all of these different channels and more to be able to provide that experience and to be able to make sure that the privacy is in place the way that it needs to be, and that the security is just enough, but not so much that it's too hard for users to consume your services. So these things have to be effectively integrated. And if you look at the boxes below, you see some of the themes that we're going to talk about today on how you do that in a way that simplifies it from the end user's experience and effectively simplifies and streamlines the way that you can provide that to the IT folks that are implementing this as well. And so we know that privacy and consent is a very important part of that, and chained right under it is also the ability to achieve regulatory compliance of that user's data, right? And we'll talk about omni-channel view and the different types of constituents of identities as we go through today. But I was thinking of an analogy that I thought was kind of interesting to tie together sort of the importance and the role of where identity fits into this. And if you think of it, we see here the key to delivering the next generation of value-based care. And if you think of it, you have these business processes, right, that are the vehicle of how you deliver the value that a user is expecting. And identity is a key to that. So I think key, and I think vehicle, and I think of a comparison to vehicles in the real world. So your favorite type of vehicle, a car, truck, or an SUV. And if you think about a vehicle in the physical world, they combine a lot of different complex systems that have to be integrated and work together to be able to get you where you're trying to go. And it's the exact same thing with the business processes that you're looking to deliver across all these different channels. You've got a series of systems that need to integrate and talk with each other in a way that provides the right experience while ensuring the privacy and the security of the users and the users' data. So if we think about a vehicle in the real world, it's put together, and the point is that people want to get in it and they care about getting to where they want to go. Now, the manufacturers of those vehicles put a lot in to make sure that there's creature comforts, i.e. the experience in the digital world and in your digital vehicle. And they put in a lot of work to ensure the safety of the vehicle, which maps to the security in our digital vehicle, if you will. And when you first experience these things, they're upgraded, you notice, wow, that's really great and really nice. But it's not very long before you take them for granted and you expect it. And then it's just something that you expect as part of your experience, and you notice it if it's not there. You notice it if it's not working or if something goes wrong. And that's very similar to the experiences that people are expecting online as digital transformation propels us forward. You look at Apple and Amazon and Google and others that are increasing the comforts or increasing the experiences and in some cases increasing the security, and that becomes more expected. Now, here's the interesting thing, and here's where identity comes in. Neither the physical vehicle or the digital vehicle of your business process can go anywhere without the key. So if you have a physical vehicle, you're looking at a key like this, and in your digital vehicle, it could be a key like this. But here's the interesting thing about the key. You've got this well-engineered business process. You've got a bunch of systems that have been integrated, but the user can't take them anywhere. They can't take them to their destination if they can't log in correctly or easily, if they have problems, if they need to reset their password and they can't figure it out, if they have a hard time registering or identity proofing. they're not going where they need to go, right? And so if you think about how we look at vehicles, we care most about getting where we want to go, getting to our destination. But for how important the key is and getting the vehicle started and getting us to places, we take that for granted as well, unless it's not working. And so making that work for your digital processes, for your digital vehicles, is really an important thing. And if you think about it also, just on the key part, how complex is it, the process of starting the vehicle behind the scenes, all the different systems that have to talk to each other? Well, you get in, you've got this key in your pocket, put your foot on the brake, and you press the button, and you're off to the races. But if it doesn't work, the vehicle is nothing but a big hunk of metal and plastic on wheels that won't take you anywhere. And so as we talk through identity today, and we talk about the importance of experiences, and we talk about how you balance that with security, let's think of it in sort of that angle from the user's perspective and how we provide them value, whether that user is a customer, whether that user is an IT person on the inside. We need to provide them the right key and the ease to start the vehicle, to get to where they're trying to go, to be able to easily make or change that appointment, to be able to access the healthcare data that they need, to be able to share the data with their healthcare data, or to share wellness data from a fitness app with their provider, with the understanding that they can take that back when they need to and that data is going to remain secure. Those are the things that they care about, and those are the things that they're trying to do, but identity is that key to doing it, and if it's in place, people aren't even going to notice it, right? And that's success. We don't wake up in the morning and say, I can't wait to go figure out how to log into this site or how to register to this new service. We think, I need to go change that appointment, or I need to share that data. And so as important as it is, it's also important that it's transparent to the users in that way. So if we think about focusing specifically on experience for a minute, a lot of times we like to talk about the user journey and what that journey looks like. And so some of the things that we do is we look at, where is that identity information? Where's that data that we can actually pull together so that we can see everything that the person is doing across a lot of different applications and channels to actually give them that experience, right? And this actually allows us to build trust with the consumer, or build trust with the users, and to give them that consolidated view. Now, from a security perspective, it's also very important for establishing trust and making sure that what we ask the users to do is not too much friction, but still maintaining the right level of security. And I do apologize, it's taking a while, at least on my end. Facilitators, I don't know if you're seeing this, but for the slides to actually publish as I advance the slides. So I'm still seeing an earlier slide, but I'm actually on the slide talking about security. So I'm going to give it a second here and see if it updates. Okay, there we go. So now we're on high-stakes security and privacy. So an interesting statistic here, we see that 84% of people trust hospitals to keep their healthcare information safe. But those same people that were surveyed say that 45% of them, that only 45% of them trust tech companies to keep their healthcare information safe. Now, what did we say back at the beginning? Every healthcare company these days is a digital company. And so we've got work to do to make sure that while we're making it easy and transparent for them to navigate your business processes, that we're keeping things secure, and that they're aware that we're keeping them secure as well. Now, there's another interesting aspect to this, and it's connected devices. And so a lot of times when we think of connected devices, our minds first may go to security and how they can be their security risk and security threats. And it's true. Security is a really important concern when it comes to connected devices, especially in the healthcare field, because of some of the implications it could have. If an insulin pump is hijacked or what have you. So that's important. And the role of identity in connected devices continues to play out the balance of the experience and security. On the security side, these devices need digital identities themselves. These identities need to be managed along with the identities of the users who own the devices, or in the case of shared devices, who's using the device, what data is coming off the device, and who can it be shared with. But there's another aspect on the experience side that we haven't talked about as much, and that is some of these devices becoming an extension of what we call systems of engagement, a new way for you to engage with your customers through different screens. Now that could start from a mobile application on a mobile device, but it also can feed through all different types of connected connected watches and other things that feed wellness data in that needs to be protected. So initially, when you look at this slide here, we started off with engaging customers digitally. Now I'm talking about not necessarily in person, but digitally through web browsers, mobile applications, chat applications, and we've seen advancements there. And these are the ways that we deliver business value and focus on customers and focus on privacy and security. But when we add IoT devices, now things change a little bit because we've got the ability to engage users through their screens and give them another way to experience our business processes, right? So that they can share that data from a mobile app or maybe even from their watch, but have the proper controls in place so that they know they can see who it's been shared with, they can take it back if they need to, if they're switching providers, switching pharmacies, what have you, but they're in control even from the devices, and you can give them that experience. So you have the new ways to actually engage with your constituents, with your users. So a quick check of where we are so far. We've talked about the importance on this next slide of digital identity. Let's just summarize what we've discussed here. So we've said that digital businesses, all businesses are digital, all healthcare businesses are digital, and digital business definitely needs digital identity. And why does it need digital identity? Because we have to provide delightful experiences. Security is non-negotiable. Connected to security is the ability to secure the privacy and allow for users to consent to what data will be shared. And directly connected to that is the ability to maintain compliance with lots of different laws and regulations that are out there specifically to this healthcare industry, and also integrate all of the connected devices. So identity is critical to all of those different things. But the world is not perfect, and every system that is out there today is not 100% conducive to achieving these goals. So there's some issues. And on this next slide here, as I push it out, we say the existing approaches today are falling short. And so in some cases, we have identity information that's spread all across different applications and it's not pulled together. So that's getting back to that single view of the customer and pulling that data together. But as you pull all that data together, you have even greater responsibility to protect it and make sure only the right folks are accessing it. Now, if you look at all these other different pieces here, whether it's outdated security, problems with extensibility, scalability, inflexible solutions, there's one theme that continues to emerge here, and that theme is issues with legacy systems, right? And so as I go here to the next slide, we talk about what I like to call the legacy dilemma. Let's bring back our analogy to the vehicle here for a second. And this is where, thankfully, the analogy starts to break down, because if you have an old physical vehicle and it doesn't have doesn't have a smart key, it has an old-fashioned key, and it doesn't have all of the creature comfort for the great experiences, and it doesn't have the backup camera, it doesn't have the parking sensors, it doesn't have the lane departure assist. Well, you can't just add those things on to an older physical vehicle, but in your digital vehicle of your business processes, the good news, you can layer those things on top digitally and solve your legacy issues. But let's take a look at what that looks like. So in just about every large enterprise, you've got some systems that have been around forever. Now, these are your business systems. They're also your identity systems, right? You've invested in them. They've been integrated either on your workforce side or on your customer-facing side. Sometimes you've built homegrown systems for applications that you have facing your customers. But guess what? Now that homegrown system can't do multi-factor authentication in the way that you need. That legacy system can't do the type of high assurance registration that you need to do to have someone sign up and have the right level of assurance from the beginning. And these tactical systems that you're building, they have issues as well. So that leads to higher costs in your organization. These are things that decelerate, that slow down digital transformation, right? And so it leads to a poor user experience, it increases costs, and then you come up with the dilemma. Now, this is the dilemma part that I was actually talking about. Time to build a new system, because you got to keep moving forward. You got to keep answering the needs of the future. So you have a decision to make. There is this small tactical piece that you could add on, and it could get you to solve your pain point immediately. But the problem is it doesn't exactly address the full needs of your organization. So what can happen is eventually it will become another silo, another legacy system that's tactical, and it's not allowing you to take a strategic approach to your identity and access management systems. And so, again, as I push this next slide here, having a little bit of delays, you can see the actual scope of your business needs are all of these things. You need to bring your legacy and your homegrown systems along for the ride because they're a critical part of your business process vehicle and the keys to it that your users need to experience. And so, what does that look like if we can actually solve that issue? Well, the first thing you see is we can pull up these anchors so that it's no longer a drag on your organization. We can get rid of the problems that it's causing, and what we really want to do is advance to delivering strategic identity and access management for your organization. And as I wait for the slides to catch up, we'll show you a picture of that. But what it really comes down to is instead of having your block of your legacy applications and your home-built applications, you bring those things along for the ride, and you take that along with the things that you're building now, and you put them all together so that you have a single approach and you're not having silos of different identity and access management capabilities. And that includes the vehicle that we use to provide this to our employees, to our IT folks who are helping build these systems, because it's ever so important that they're able to have a vehicle that gets them where they need to go, because where are they going? Their destination is to deliver the systems that actually give the good experiences to your consumers. And so they need to have the right identity and access management capabilities as well. And when you're able to pull all of these things together, digital identity can actually become a differentiator for your organization. It actually can make a huge difference in how you're perceived and how your customers trust you, your brand, and value you and the processes that you provide them. And that's what we do. So as it was introduced in the beginning, I'm with Forgerock, and we help people safely and simply access the connected world. And we have solutions that can layer on top of your digital legacy, your digital homegrown solutions, and the things that you're trying to build for the future to allow you to coexist with the things that you have and to be able to bring them forward while you're building new things, because of our standards-based approach and because of our ability to allow IT, if you're a technical person on this call, to be able to have an API-first approach and to be able to consume things in a variety of different ways, including as a cloud service, fully as a service, or maybe you're in a private cloud like AWS or GCP or Azure, and you want to deploy things in a DevOps fashion. Got that too. Maybe you still have some things on premise and you need to manage it that way, and you need to have a hybrid combination of those three. That's where we come in, and that's where we can help. Now, I'm going to try to advance to this next slide. I do apologize. I've been having problems with the slides today. I'm actually going for this one. Let me try it one more time to get caught up here. In this next phase here, for the next couple of minutes, before I turn it over to Kevin, I want to talk about a specific piece that we provide that allows you to do this, and that allows your IT folks to make it easy for them to do deployment. So we have something in Forgerock called Intelligent Access. And Intelligent Access is a way that you can balance specifically the level of security and the type of experience that a user has when they're trying to access an application. And the balance is key here, because if you have different things, you have different types of users, you have different applications along your business process, you have, boy, the slides are all over the place for me, folks. I do apologize for that. You have different applications, and you have different types of data. So you have different levels of security that you need to care about for your users. And you can basically move the pieces around the board literally and connect things so that you can decide what kind of experience that you want to provide. And so I have a video demonstration here that's going to show that. And in this case, I want to talk about the last piece of the analogy, and that is the key to the physical car. Think about if you lose that key, how hard is it to have a new key associated with that car? Well, that's a dealer-only option, as they say, because that's a secure part of the process. And The reason for that is because we want to make sure that if I own the same sort of make and model car that you have, it's not easy for me to take my key and to go make it work with your vehicle. Now, in the digital world, for your digital vehicle of your business process, maybe we have a key like this. And the importance is, how can I prove that I am who that I say that I am online, and then make a secure association with this key so that I can then use it to authenticate at a high level of assurance to other types of services. So I have a video, and we're going to try to start playing it here. So let's just see what the delay is like as I cue this up here. In the video, we're going to see, number one, Frank registering for a service. So he's putting in his username here, and the first thing it's going to do is it's going to take him to verify his identity. Now you're seeing the Onfido piece here, and he's going to use his driver's license to go and prove his identity of who he says he is. And he's going to do that by taking a picture of his driver's license. Now I've obscured it here, and I've slowed down the process. Actually, we take a picture of the back of the driver's license and so forth. But here he's creating a password, and then he's able to log in. Now, at the point where he created that password, that's where he could have securely enrolled a key like this as well. Now, this piece of the video that you're seeing on the back end, you see there's an Onfido registration node. This is the experience of the IT person on the background who wants to create that journey. Going to be able to go and take some boxes, drag them around, make some connections, and that one little box that says Onfido registration node is how we're connected with the Onfido service through our intelligent access and through our trust network. So you see the IT administrator here in a simplified view is able to just start dragging connections. You see that Frank came in, he collected his username, he did the registration node, which was going through and taking a picture of his driver's license, he created a password, and then his ID was provisioned, and he was successful, and he had the access that he needed. So that's a very quick demonstration to kind of show you how in real life you can move the pieces around the board to provide a great experience with the right level of security for that part of the business process to the user, while also making it easy for your IT folks to configure it and manage it on the back end, because that's an important part, as we talked about in the very beginning, of being able to manage those costs and manage the efficiencies of how those processes work. So the last piece that I'll cover here is the part that you saw from Onfido, and the part that Kevin's getting ready to go in and show you more details about is from our trust network. And the trust network is a really unique piece for Forgerock that allows us, on top of all of the things that we have built into intelligent authentication, to be able to add in additional biometrics, parts of multi-factor authentication, to add in different types of identity proofing. Onfido is the example that you're seeing today, so that you can tailor the type of experience, the type of authentication, the type of identity proofing at registration that you want to see. And so a really key piece here. Now, the video went by kind of quickly, but there's one other thing I want to just describe that's different about what we provide from everyone else. And if you saw, it went by quickly, but when Frank registered, after he was done registering and selecting his password, he was immediately authenticated. He went right into, we saw his profile. That would be whatever application that he had. If he had to change his password, those things are combined. When we talk about strategic identity, bringing those things together, actually, he didn't have to go over and create an account and then sign in. And then after he's done creating his account, the experience, you have to go back. You just selected the password, and then you have to go over here and you have to log in again. If you forget your password, you go over here and you reset it, and then you're resetting it, but then you still have to come back over to this side and type in your password again. And that's because you've got different systems doing different pieces of it, making things more difficult. And so with Forgerock Intelligent Access, all of those things are built into experience that just flow. So if you register, after you select your password or after you enroll your key, you go straight into whatever you're trying to do. You don't have to log in again. If you forget your password, you reset it in line. You don't have to go back and forth. It's a smoother flow for your end users, and of course, it's easy for your IT team to configure. So I'm just about at the allotted time that I had for this, and with that, I'd love to turn it over to Kevin to talk about the specifics and the great stuff that Onfido is able to provide. So Kevin, over to you.
Great, thanks, Ashley. I appreciate that, and thanks for your rolling with the punches on the slides there. So as Ashley mentioned, I think this is a great point where we'll kind of dig a little bit deeper on the very front of the process that Ashley was going through around the identity lifecycle. And the key points that he brought up, I think, are really important, where you want to emphasize that when you're first creating a relationship with one of your customers, obviously you need to figure out who they are and bind them to their legal identity to bring them through your system if you're onboarding them. So the concepts of enrollment, account creation, onboarding is all of the point. And also, as he mentioned, that people don't wake up every day to enroll in or trying to use the services. So user experience is such a critical aspect to that particular step. The business metrics of getting people through your system is what you're looking at. You don't want to add additional steps or where they're not real gains in security. So with all that being said, that's really what we want to talk about here, is a little bit more around the onboarding process and the parts of that we bring into the system that really complements those great platforms like Forgerock to really, think of that full life cycle of the user as they move down and actually into servicing. So just as a quick reminder that Onfido, we're sort of an identity and front door company to this identity life cycle. Our business is really to help bring that real identity into your digital world. So in this ability for companies to go digital first with their strategy and not have in-person opportunity where they can physically insert people, you need a solution where you can do that digitally. And really, that's what we do. And the aspect that we're using to do that is by binding your legal identity in the form of a identity document to your persona that's represented space that's being represented like I am to you. So that is our goal. Now, there's a lot to that in that when you go to a 2D world that's online, you really introduce a lot of opportunities for fraud to happen. And this is an example that builds out as a question usually that says, okay, look at all these faces on here and pick out the one that's fake. Well, all of these, they've been created through an AI, merging different people together, identity that you see here. And for just, inspecting that, it's a difficult task to look at. So you have to have a process in place that really can ground that digital image to something that's real. Now, the way that happens, as I mentioned, is that you look at first of input, right? One is everyone's gone through the aspect of, being car support or a pub, or I'll go back to Ash's analogy of maybe renting a good one for us to push through here, where you want to go and present yourself to the rental car agency. You need to verify it's you, and they'll give you the keys to the car to operate. So there's two aspects to this, as I mentioned, that you have a legitimate document, trust, especially digitally, and you need to have an image that you can trust that's being submitted, and then those two need to match the face that I'm holding right now and the card. The process really looks at that and says, can you use these two inputs and trust them into who Kevin really is as I'm applying to use this service? And that's really the essence of what we do. Now, the problem you have here is that you start to look at this example here that says, okay, well, can I trust that document? And as you scale and look, maybe some of these you'll identify as, being true or not being legitimate, or they are. But really, the answer, the original ones up in the corner, all sorts of ways that you can present a fraud ID. And that's really the essence of what we do, is help identify those. Now, back to the onboarding user experience piece here is most people are legitimate people. And so you need to do a service of evaluating for fraud without impacting the 99% of people that are. And that's really the challenge of the business. As you're looking at onboarding users for service, you want to get through as quick as possible, not inconvenience them. So as you go through these different types of fraud, I'm going to explain a few of them just for the question, how do you do that in a way that's accurate and within the context of your business process? So first, there's a traditional way of saying, I'm going to use someone's document and or not use my face, use my document but not my face. And so the concept of facial matching is very important here. You're taking a selfie and then comparing it to an extracted image off of the document. It's very challenging, obviously. Because current, it might not be a good picture of they might have slightly different appearance now. And this is the essence of what we provide as a decent match there, that selfie that's presented in real time. Well, the big question then becomes now, can you use the selfie image? Was it spoofed or not? The process of taking a static photo, you do a lot of analysis to make sure that there are not things happening in that capture that would be clearly indicating that there's something going on that's suspicious. So first and foremost, you want to make sure that it's a live capture of a picture, that it's a genuine selfie. It's not a picture of my phone. It's not a picture of a picture. Things of forensics, as you can see through there, of identifying where those potential areas of risk are based on that selfie. So the red indicates where you're having interface problems based on the picture of the image or the phone. But you also want to look at also the characteristics of the photo to make sure that there are also things that are not being presented within there that can show even more sophisticated spoofing that's happening. The other part is now looking at the image on the document and making sure that that just wasn't swapped out with a selfie of myself. So this is usually a video that shows this in real time. This is typically handled by very advanced machine learning algorithms that are comparing the edges of that image to determine whether or not that something was cut out and replaced. And this happens in literally seconds. And the way, of course, machine learning works is it will run the analysis to a degree of confidence and then tell you if it's legitimate or fake or something in the middle that needs to be interpreted. So the science of this whole solution is that you can get to the results of high confidence that indicate whether it's good or bad. Another way that's more happening with the advanced tools, various masks, some of these can be purchased in a manner of the people that have really high-risk profiles and a really big carrot to go after will manufacture very sophisticated ones. This comes out of a lot of the movie productions and what have you that we're aware of. So you need to have additional checks that if you do have an application that has a pretty high-risk profile, you want to add a couple extra human movements that will allow that user to really prove their humanness or their liveness. And this, again, brings in more challenges that allow the user to turn their head or move their eyes around the screen. There's various ways that you can do this that bring that level of assurance down that really says, yes, this is not a very sophisticated mask in this case. And then finally, there's, again, on the, taking a look at the document itself, again, you can also do similar things to the selfie where you're taking a picture of a document or a photocopy and trying to use that. Again, you want to have that really assessed quickly so that you can know that you can trust the document in this process. Finally, we all know that the dark web is a bazaar of options for buying counterfeit IDs or recently stolen IDs or manufactured IDs. So you really need to have a set of sophisticated checks that run on top of some of those basic fraud vectors I showed you that really take the deep look at the professionals. And there's all sorts of ways that very, very subtle ways can be, subtle errors can be made in the manufacturing process of these that requires very sophisticated analysis of fonts and spacing and layout analysis of the overall document that will pick up that even slightest error that a human eye could not pick up. So some of these activities are really digital first forensics. And just kind of recapping all these different efforts, what you're basically seeing is a large library of processes that are running simultaneously and extremely fast to determine these various fraud vectors to flag very quickly whether or not it's in that 1% or less area of fraud or whether it's the bulk of the good users that are coming through. So hopefully that gives you a feel for how this thing runs. It's a very difficult process because you have obviously a whole bunch of documents. There are thousands of documents around the world that are in use. There's many different types of cultures of people, ages of people, and appearances of people. And then as I just showed you a snapshot of, there's a whole bunch of fraud vectors that come in that can be, that need to be detected. And of course, that's the arms race that's going to continue in this space. So that gives you the feel for what it is. Now, how does this play in this overall identity life cycle? I think it's very important that we really emphasize that a lot of this is put on the enrollment step or that point of creating the relationship that Ashley just showed you when we're setting up the systems and getting them through the front door. The whole point there is that after they've gone through this process, it's allowing your business to create a credential and to form a relationship with the user. And at that point now you have a very strong component that now builds trust through the entire chain of the identity lifecycle. There's always that familiar X curve of adding more security and reducing the user experience, but by introducing this type of process, you're actually, through the introduction of it, you're gaining security that now you can rely on downstream. Without it, you have to increase the security in the back end, really focus more on transaction monitoring and other types of processes because you don't really have that assurance that it's my legal identity. So it's a very complementary technology to the downstream authentication and fraud risk screening services that are out there. But additionally, what you can do is, because you've been able to capture some of this information, you're able to use it again in the cases where a user, forgets their password. They call in through the help desk. They want to get access to their service. Maybe it's an investment account or healthcare account that has a fairly high risk profile to it. You don't just want to give them a very easy challenge that they can defeat. So this is an opportunity, again, to have them recheck themselves through their selfie, and then you can compare that to what you've captured at the enrollment process and be able to bind that user much more tightly to let them through and get access back to their service. This happens when users lose their device or just completely lose their credentials. So there's ability to use some of this information, again, in a very smart way downstream that leverages that investment of that very critical user experience that you opened up in the enrollment process. Now, there's obviously problems that we're trying to help you solve by doing this. And obviously, as I mentioned, the losing the device is a big one. Account takeover is a classic one where my account's being hacked, and you're able to really bring a high level of deterrence there, because in many cases when you're enrolling a user using a biometric, a fraudster is not going to want to give their biometric up in the first place. Additionally, if they do get caught and we flag them as a fraudster, we're able to capture that and filter them for repeat attacks. We all know that fraudsters make a business out of this and try to come in and attack once they've found a vulnerability. So being able to filter past users that have been flagged is a very important aspect to keep that repeat attack going in your business. And then finally, as they're the users in the system, maybe you use this document or selfie process when you determine there's a high-risk transaction. So some of our customers will do that when something starts to trigger on the risk flagging of the behavioral transactions, and you then offer the requirement to present their biometric to confirm that that's them again. So all these are different ways that you can use this once you've captured it, so it's reusable in many ways. It's beneficial. It's not just a one-time service that you have to do upfront and onboard. Now, in the title, we talked a lot about privacy, and again, it's hard not to get into these systems and really think about this piece because it's very sensitive data we're all very aware of, and it's very important that the industry as a whole really thinks about this up front. So obviously, with consent laws and what have you from the GDPR a few years back, it's very important that we think about many aspects here, and keeping a regulatory compliance view on all these systems is very important. So there's a lot of work that we do personally to invest in this space and really think further about how we can bring the conversation forward. We've done some work in the UK with the ICO up there on a couple projects that are really trying to help innovate this space, really having a safe place to innovate different ways of using credentials in multiple ways. One of the projects we were really proud of that we worked on was helping reducing algorithmic bias. When we start to think about some of the spatial biometric technology, we've done a lot of great work there and with the industry. But a really big part for many of you is that you have businesses that have to be involved with jurisdictional boundaries and really thinking about how data flow goes in and out of your business, and especially if you're a multinational, how do you negotiate that? So a couple aspects there that are very important is being able to first, in the middle as you see there, being able to delete data on a schedule that's under your control based on your retention policies. Of course, that goes into how the data is stored in the first place. So being able to capture mathematical representations of biometrics versus storing pure biometrics, and a lot of scrutiny, of course, on the ID images themselves is very important. But as I also mentioned, being able to store that in a manner that you wish, under the timeframes that you wish, and having all sorts of granular deletion capabilities for that data is something that we include in our platform. And as I mentioned, on the global perspective or the regional perspective, it's very important that you're able to have systems that process data in country or in region, depending on it. And as you look at multi-nodes across your business around the world, that you're able to have that flexibility built into your platform. So it's, especially with cloud platforms where you have a lot of this processing power that we were talking about the first part of my talk, making sure that you have this data element that's as close to possible being resident in the country of your choice is very important. So we've architected a lot of that into our system to really allow for that to be compliant to the local laws and regulations. So with that, I think we are hitting toward the end here of just including my section before I hand it back to Ashley, of just saying, if you take a step back and think about what I've shared, it's really that the identity verification component of onboarding is really important. That, as you look at that, you really need to consider user experience and, the way that you can best leverage that process in the context of your flow, to take advantage of that flow to reduce fraud, but also to take advantage of that flow to be able to leverage that information, the biometric information in particular, for other use cases down at the authentication part of your user flow, or in some of those scenarios that I discussed where the user may have forgotten or lost their device or forgotten their password. So there's many ways this can be leveraged. The Onfido node, as the great demo showed, is really a great capability that Forgerock offers as part of its platform. It's a very easy to integrate piece that was really straightforward, as you saw there. We can talk about that more. But something that's very powerful as a combination between, as you think about a holistic identity access management strategy. So with that point, I will hand it back to Ashley to take it over.
Great. Thanks, Kevin, so much, and really great presentation. A couple of things struck me as you were speaking on this. And, the first one is just how deep, these things go for the proofing piece that you went through, and all of the intricacies that are involved in it, and how much of that, when we think about back to the beginning of we're trying to just provide the right access to the right people at the right time, and how important that is. But there's so many different pieces and parts to it, and there's different areas of pockets of really deep expertise like Onfido has in this particular area of, an important part of establishing an identity when people are as remote as they are, and that is being able to know that who you're dealing with on the other end is in fact who they're claiming to be. And it's a really important part, but it just shows, I think, the point that we want to make overall is that we want to keep it simple for the consumers to be able to do these things. And, all of the depth that you went over here reminds me, looking back to the demo, I sign up, I put in what my username is going to be, I take a picture of my driver's license front and back, I take a picture of myself. That experience, even though there's so much behind it, is not so bad when you think of the level of assurance that we're able to get for a user for that. So I think really great presentation. And I just have one more slide here. This last one kind of is talking about the Forgerock platform that I've just pushed. But you ended on some note around privacy, and there's one other piece that I'll just bring up as we kind of approach the question and answer section here. Within our access management capability here, so if you look at the center of this diagram for our slide, we've got the dynamic orchestration. This intelligent access is the piece that we focused on. Now, the breadth of our platform in Forgerock is all of these other pieces. Some of them are on the more technical end, but we've got all of the core pieces. We've got the identity management of being able to connect to all these data sources and push and pull, provision and deprovision identity data from all these different systems, and to have a single view of all the access that your folks have across all the different systems with our autonomous identity. And having a highly scalable directory that can be fully containerized and deployed via a DevOps in a DevOps scenario, which is also the same directory that's supporting our cloud as a service. Identity governance, right, going back to your employees and your contractors. Access management that covers the whole gamut for runtime, and that's where I kind of wanted to end. We talk about runtime access management, and that's the point where you're trying to actually register and you're going through the intelligent access piece and it's connecting these pieces. That's the point where you're authenticating, you're putting in your password. That's the point where you're federating to have single sign-on. That's the point where you're going through an authorization decision behind the scenes to say, I know who this person is, but are they actually authorized to delete this file or to see this piece of data? And from a privacy perspective, a really important part of our access management solution is our user-managed access component of access management. And that is, in fact, is a standards-based privacy protocol. For those of you technical in the audience, it's built on top of OAuth 2. And what it means from a value perspective is that your users can actually go through and say, here's a representative piece of data, or here's a data stream, or here's a bit of data. I want to click the share button, kind of like a Google Doc, and I want to say who I want to share it with. And I want to say either for how long, or I want to be able to go back and see who I've shared things with and take it back. So it's a standards-based way to share and unshare from a consent perspective, from a privacy perspective, the data that you, the patient, you, the customer, are the resource owner, right? And so from a privacy and a compliance perspective, just that one little thing is we find our customers in the healthcare industry find hugely valuable. Because at the end of the day, privacy is just another authorization decision, right? When it comes down to, can I access your data, whether I'm a doctor or whether I'm another device that's trying to access data through a stream, it's an authorization question, yes or no. Am I allowed to do that based on the current context right now, based on all these different variables? And one of those key variables is, has the user consented for you to access this data in this moment, or have they just revoked it 2 minutes ago and now you can't? So it's a critical part of access management. It's an important part of our platform. And so I'll kind of close with that, just the point that we have, this large platform, our trust network, of which you just saw an amazing example from Kevin of Onfido and what they're able to do, the depth that they're able to take that piece, and the fact that you saw that one little box that you can drag in, and the journey portion of being able to configure intelligent access and wire it together with other things, incredibly powerful stuff. So that brings us to the point where we want to start talking, I think, about questions and answers. However, we do have one poll to share with you all, and I'm going to go ahead and start that. So I think if you look, I believe, in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you should see a single poll that you can answer as if you're interested in a follow-up conversation with either Forgerock or Onfido. So I have clicked start on that anyway for our facilitators. If you see that going out, that's great. But now we want to take the remaining time that we have and get into some questions and answers. So if you have questions, please feel free to submit them via typing them into the platform. And if we don't get to all the questions today, we will certainly do follow-up. So I'm going to start with this question here. So let's see. The question says, do you feel that the value that value identity is do you feel that value identity is overlooked to accomplish other security initiatives? And is there a way to quickly assess other areas of focus? So I think what this question is talking about here is, what are other security initiatives that digital identity can help with? And I want to go back to Kevin, something that you brought up, because I think it's germane and it's something that you were just talking about, and that's fraud, right? So fraud detection and prevention. I mean, identity is at the front door of trying to block out, account takeover types of things, impersonation, that's the word, to impersonate someone. The types of things that you mentioned around fraud are a big deal. They're a big deal in healthcare. They're a big deal in a lot of different industries. And if you go back to our intelligent access, the ability to build the trees, as we call them, these decision trees, to be able to, at a certain point, go out and check something else to see if that account has been compromised, to dynamically determine if you need to step up the verification of a person. Because let's remember, there may be some applications and processes where you want a very low friction registration, and to get a user started, you might just ask for their first name, last name, and email address, and then they select the password. But the next time they come back, when they want to do something that has more of a potential impact, that has has their private data, whatever it is, then you need to step them up, and you need to get more information. So whether it's at the point of creating an account, or whether it's at the point of you're authenticating, but something seems like it might not be right, so we either need to step you up, or we need to take another step, or we need to say, okay, you can come in, you're authenticated, but you're not able to do these things that are of a higher importance. You get all that flexibility with intelligent access, and with, as you saw from Kevin, the great capabilities, the depth of capabilities from our partners. So I would say, especially on the external facing or public facing capabilities, that fraud management and detection is a huge one. And of course, on the internal side, I think insider threat is another security area where you can help to protect your systems. We talked about this, the business process, the digital vehicle for the IT folks who have to build and create these things so your customers can get the benefits from them. So if we have, as we all know, if we have a user, if we have an administrator who's an insider who can cause compromise, can cause a data breach, can cause data to be stolen either intentionally or unintentionally. So applying those same types of standards, but maybe even a stronger type of authentication being required for certain types of things for our internal users, also very important from a security perspective to prevent the same issues that ultimately would lead to a breach or to lead to not being in compliance, but happening from the inside instead of from the outside. So I would definitely think those are a couple areas for security purposes. Now, let's see. Kevin, do you want to take the next question?
Yeah, well, that kind of relates to another question we had, which is a little bit more clarity on how the integrated components work together between our two companies and the products. And I think the demo showed
Great.
the ease of it. Really, it was really out of the box. The hard work's been done by our two companies and very thoughtful. We actually have a former Forgerock couple of employees on our side, and they really thought carefully about this to make it as easy as possible on the deployment side, and of course brings all the flexibility on the user experience side. So it was as easy as you saw from Ashley of just dragging and dropping the Onfido registration plugin over into the Octree or creating a new Octree with that. There is an ability to configure the service inside of the Access Manager. And then in the spirit of everything at Forgerock, we built it in a way that is open source so that if there are things you want to customize or play with, you have that ability also. So from an out-of-box perspective, it's pretty seamless and very consistent with what your normal Forgerock experience is. And then, of course, the things you want to make customized are very straightforward.
I think that's a great point, Kevin. And I'd also call out that, I put an emphasis on, which is true, the ability of, your standard IT folks to be able to drag and drop, the concept of low code or no code configuration, but advanced configuration. But what you talked about reminded me of something else, which is, these nodes that we have built for intelligent access, our companies have built that together so that you can just add the node in from open source and drag it and drop it. You can build other nodes as well. So for all of the point I want to get to here is for all of the things that you want to do that are everyday, multi-factor authentication, all the different things, you can drag and drop those nodes in. However, the extensibility of our platform allows that if you want to build your own node, you can do that. Or if you want to import a different open source node, you can do that and then put that into the whole mix of your trees and your decision flows. So you get the best of both worlds is the point. Drag and drop low code, or if you need to do something really custom to integrate with your legacy, you're able to do that as well, which I think is really important. Okay, I think we only have time for one more question here. Let's see. When you look at modern identity and access management approaches, what are some key elements to look for in overcoming legacy challenges that can slow down an implementation? And I started to talk about this in an abbreviated way earlier, but legacy itself is the thing that slows down digital transformation in so many ways, some because of the cost that it takes to maintain it and keep it in place. But one of the things that I think can really help accelerate that is the ability to do the modern thing that you need to do to keep your business going while coexisting with the legacy thing that you have or the homegrown thing that you have with a software like Forgerock that you can lower down on top of what you have. And it has the built-in abilities to talk to and integrate with legacy identity and access management systems in a way that will allow an old system to suddenly accept a great kind of multi-factor authentication because Forgerock is fronting it for you. So I think that coexisting is a key capability that we have. And another piece that we provide, and again, kind of on the open source theme, is we build these accelerator toolkits and for some of the most common legacy needs for migration. And what those are is open source sets of configurations for our platform that will allow you to have people automatically single sign-on in through to an older application and have that be a seamless experience. Or if you're in the point where you're migrating away from a legacy system, that as someone signs in, their account's automatically migrated over to the new system, transparent to them. So those type of toolkits to accelerate those things are another thing that I would point to. So I'm looking at the clock here. I see one more question here, Kevin. Do you think you have time to answer it in 1 minute?
I'll give it a shot. So it's a broad question. I think we could both chip away at this one, but it came down to the user journey and thinking about it end to end. How do you help with the user experience side, just to paraphrase, and the security? So you're really not, creating a lot of drop-off and friction. I think this goes to both the onboarding side and the authentication side. There's a couple of key principles you need to think about, which is, think about the whole flow and really chart it out, from end to end, every step along the way. Have your design team involved as much as your product and technology and teams. There's always this great conversation between, the front end the business side and the fraud teams, and how do you negotiate that you have to do it or put it in where and to what degree. So all those conversations you should have up front, and then really think carefully about how do you implement this in a proper way where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. So the security benefit from this, as I mentioned, trying to leverage everything you can out of that asset once you've captured it, not just make it a one-time transaction. Really thinking about the context you set with the user prior to them shifting into this process. There's a couple basic principles there that really go a long way. And think about it early. Don't try and just retrofit it in and do a bunch of A/B testing along the way. That's a very difficult way to learn some lessons. And companies like Forgerock and Onfido can share our best practices of deploying some very high-scale systems with our customers with you.
Well, that's awesome, Kevin. I think you nailed it, and that also brings us to the top of the hour. So, thank you to everyone out there so much for being a part of this today. And on behalf of Kevin and myself, and I guess we will turn it back over to our moderators. So thank you again.
Thank you. And to our speakers, thank you for that great presentation and for sharing your thoughts. And thank you to the audience for participating in today's webinar. This concludes today's presentation. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.